Hello all, and welcome to the NCSC webinar on using online petitions. Um, Thank you all for participating, and I think this is going to be great. The we're joined today by Josh Nelson from CREDO Mobile and CREDO Mobilize, who's going to walk us through their particular system. I will. This is not an ad just for CREDO. We can talk about this later, but I will encourage you to explore the different platforms that are out there. I just wanted to have a hands-on application of one of the systems. They all work sufficiently similar that I think if you get the idea here, you'll get the idea in general. If you have questions as you go along, on the side of your screen in the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a icon shaped like a hand. If you hit that, it'll indicate that you would like me to unmute you, and then you can ask a question, or there is a questions interface which will let you uh, type in a question, and then I'll just write it back. And I can either just type an answer back to you, or I can read the question off, and Josh and I will talk it through. So, um, without if there are other questions as you go along, just let me know. There is a chat function, so if we have something that we want to send to you, we can send that out. And before we get too far along, I did want to just get a sense of what sort of experience all of you have in using online petitions. So we have this little poll set up, and so if you can just answer that as you go, we'll keep talking a little bit. But when you're done answering that, uh, I'll show you the results. But this is just will help Josh and me, the two of us Joshes, get a feel for what sort of background you have and how much we can assume you know and how much we can't assume you know. So Josh, for those of you who didn't get the email announcement, Josh is a campaign manager at CREDO. Before that, he worked at the National Wildlife Federation and at the Alliance for Climate Protection, which may not still be named that. It's Al Gore's group that did a lot of educational work and continues to do a lot of educational work on climate change. So he's got a lot of experience doing online organizing and especially around climate change, which is one of the two big issues that we focus on here at NCSE, the other being evolution. So I hope in the course of things we'll have a chance not just to talk about petitions, but specifically how to use them for the sorts of sciencey issues that I'm interested in and that I think all of you are interested in as well. So I'm going to close the poll, show the results here. A lot of people have signed petitions. Not as many of you have created them. At least a few of them, and at least a few people have never seen one. So we'll be sure to cover the basics as well as the more detailed elements of it. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Josh, who's going to share his screen and walk us through what's involved in creating a poll. And then when we're done with that, I hope you all will have questions, and we'll send those along, and we can discuss those and figure out what works best. So I'm going to hide those results. And Josh, take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh, for having me on, and thanks for the great work you do at NCSE. We always really appreciate your excellent work. Briefly, I'll tell you a little bit about CREDO, the organization I work for. CREDO is the nation's only progressive phone company, but while we are a company, we're really a social justice organization that happens to be embedded within a company. And so, our mission is progressive social change. That's what we're working on all the time. We work much like a nonprofit or like a group like Move On with a lot of online campaigning, but instead of using grants and fundraising from our members to fund our work, we run a company instead. CREDO's got a long history of activism over the past 30 years or so. working on basically every progressive issue you can imagine. We were previously known as Working Assets, as a long-distance phone company, and now we do mostly mobile phones. So I've been with CREDO for about 3 years, working initially only on environmental campaigns, mostly on coal, working to shut down coal plants, shut down coal mines, stop the coal industry's plan to export millions of tons of coal overseas. About a year ago, I switched over to working on a new website we have, new at the time, called CREDO Mobilize. And this is a website where anybody can create their own petition on any progressive issue. You know, we had seen lots of other folks doing this. Of course, Move On had done this. Change.org had just seen explosive growth with this sort of model. And we knew with, you know, about 3.5 million activists on CREDO's email list that we had activists all over the country who had passion, who had expertise, who had sort of on-the-ground knowledge necessary to start, fight, and win local campaigns that our staff here in San Francisco just didn't have. So we figured, let's open up the process. Let's move away from the top-down model where we're sort of leading all the campaigns on our own and asking our activists to participate, and move towards something where we're empowering activists everywhere to start and run their own campaigns. So that's the idea with our site, CREDO Mobilize. Just show you the home page here, so you can see what that looks like. First, I just want to talk for a minute about what petitions are good for. That's a question that comes up all the time is oh, does an online petition really do anything? And so yeah, a lot of people ask what do online petitions do? Do they actually do anything? I find so many of these, and I don't know what effect it has. So I want to be clear that a petition alone is not going to save the world. A petition alone generally is not going to, just on its own, if you just do a petition, is not going to win a campaign and create the change you want to see. But what petitions do is, it provides a really easy, low-bar ask to get people initially engaged in an issue. And so it helps you identify a large group of people who care about an issue. If you started off, if you're working on, say, an issue about the teaching of climate change in your local school district, if you started off by asking people to attend a huge rally and march across the town and do something that takes this huge time commitment, they need to show up somewhere at a certain time, that could have a huge impact, but you're not going to get nearly as many people involved because it's such a high bar ask and something that's so difficult to do. So that's what petitions are great for, is they let people get involved at a very sort of low-level way and register their opposition to something or their support for something, and then that allows you, the petition creator that's leading the campaign, to then follow up with those people and get them involved in increasingly meaningful ways. So perhaps after they sign the petition, they may then go on to, if you ask them to, make a phone call to the school board or show up at the next community meeting or hearing, and then eventually, once people are really engaged in the campaign, if it becomes necessary, then you get to that step of the big rally or march out in public. And then throughout the process, as you're contacting people about the petition, asking them to sign the petition and take these follow-up actions, you're also educating them about the issue and sort of priming them to do those more important things later that'll get you the win you need on the campaign. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've found to be the elements of a good petition. There are a few of these I want to mention, and we'll go through each one individually. But I sort of remember them as, a lead that pops, which is, a first sentence or two that really gets people's attention. So if they start to read the petition because their friend shared it on Facebook, or if they get an email from CREDO or Change.org or Move On, they're gonna keep reading and pay attention. So it sort of pulls them in. A compelling personal narrative can be really helpful. So if if you create a petition about something you personally have a big stake in, if it's a petition to restore food stamp cuts that Congress cut, and you can talk about how you work 2 jobs and you need food stamps to feed your children. That's just really compelling, and activists who care about these issues tend to respond really well when you've got that strong personal narrative. Having some sort of sense of urgency is helpful, and so by this I mean some sort of real timeliness indicating that we have to act right now. Maybe the city council is going to vote tomorrow would be a really strong sense of urgency. And then also a strong theory of change. And theory of change is a phrase that sort of gets thrown around a lot, but what we mean by this is, you have to be able to communicate that taking this action and that this particular ask that we're putting to the target of the petition is likely to lead to the change that we actually want, right? So that involves, choosing the right target. You don't, if a decision is going to be made by the mayor, you don't ask the school board to do it. For example, figuring out who the right decision maker is and figuring out what leverage you have on them, right? So if it's the mayor making the decision, well, you want to target the mayor, and you can sort of, make the case, well, the mayor's up for re-election in November. So, if he hears from a lot of people now, he's likely, or she's likely, she's more likely to do what we're asking her to do. So a couple examples of those, and ideally you'd have all of those in one petition, but that's hard. I've got some really good examples of those individually on different petitions. So for a lead that pops here, I'm just going to highlight, hopefully that shows up, I think it will, a couple paragraphs here. So this is the petition about telling Congress not to sort of weaken the school lunch program. And so, a major initiative spurred on by First Lady Michelle Obama. Her name definitely catches people's attention. Nutrition rules have been revamped. Now Republicans in Congress, led by Big Food and the Koch brothers, are set to roll back. And so it's got these things that sort of pop out, right? It's a major initiative. It involves Michelle Obama. Now Republicans are teaming up with the Koch brothers. So all these things to sort of pull you in and get different people to sort of stay interested and read the rest of the petition and then sign it and stay involved in the campaign. On compelling personal narrative, I'm not sure if folks are familiar. There have been several fires, catastrophes, building collapses at garment factories in Bangladesh that are used by multinational and originally American corporations like Walmart and Gap to make their clothes. The working conditions are just terrible, and a lot of the advocates working in this space have been trying to get the companies to sign on to this legally binding accord called the Accord on Fire and Building Safety. And Walmart and some of these other companies don't want to do it. They don't want to spend the extra money in their supply chain to make sure the workers who make their products can work without risking their lives. So there was a huge fire and building collapse at Rana Plaza in Bangladesh, and one of the survivors created a petition on our site. So as you can imagine, she's got a very personal, strong personal narrative on this story. She was working there when she was 14 years old, talking about the morning that the disaster happened, the aftermath and what she's had to deal with. So this really, folks are, a lot of activists in the progressive political space are very empathetic, and they read this, and it makes them want to get involved in the campaign. On a sense of urgency, I mentioned sort of the timeliness factor. So I don't know if folks saw, I think it was just this spring, earlier this year, the Arizona legislature passed a bill that would allow businesses to discriminate against gay and lesbian Arizonans based on religious beliefs. If they thought it was wrong to be gay, the law said they wouldn't have to serve them. And so we had this petition come up from an activist in Arizona in a very timely manner, right? It was right after both the bills passed, before Governor Brewer had decided whether or not to sign or veto them. And so, in the past week, they passed them. Now it's on Governor Brewer's desk awaiting her signature. She has to make a decision by the end of next week. So this one had a very strong sense of urgency, and as you can see, with almost 34,000 signatures, was extremely popular for a petition that was only relevant in one state. Strong theory of change. Here's an example of Republicans in the state legislature in Ohio and the state Secretary of State were trying to make it harder for people to vote, taking away early voting, eliminating voting on the Sunday before election, which is when a lot of churches, particularly African American churches in Ohio, send people to vote. They ask them to go vote. They call it souls to the polls. Right after church service on the Sunday before the election, they eliminated that day, specifically targeting them. And so we had a petition telling Attorney General Eric Holder to intervene and launch an investigation, which he's now going to do, in fact. And we added this. We wanted people to know that this is something that could actually happen, right? Holder had already recently intervened in a few other states related to voting rights. We knew this is something he's talked about a lot. He's written about it. We know that this is a priority for him. So sort of by pointing out that, obviously the Attorney General does have the authority to do this, but by pointing out that he's intervened in similar ways in the past, that sort of helped us make the case to activists that, signing this petition could make a difference. Now we're going to just walk through very quickly the process of creating a petition. So from the CREDO Mobilize homepage here, you can see start a campaign, very straightforward. I would now just reiterate what Josh said at the beginning. I'm showing you our platform because that's the one I'm familiar with. But if you want to create a petition, I would definitely recommend trying out all the different platforms out there. There are lots of them. Change.org and Move On are some of the other really big ones. And not only just trying them out and seeing which one you prefer, but there's no reason you can't run your petition on all three. In fact, I'd encourage that because it just gives you access to a broader audience.
And part of the advantage of using something like this rather than creating your own website and just putting something up where people can sign in is that those groups have their own networks and will share the petition to other people. So CREDO has however many hundreds of thousands of people in their database. If your petition seems like it's interesting to that audience, they spread it to more of their network as you're spreading it to your network. So it multiplies the effect to have it be on that platform. And CREDO's database is not going to be the same as the one at signon.org, is not going to be the same as the one at change.org, and so forth. So that's one of the advantages of spreading it across multiple platforms.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And another advantage of using a pre-existing platform is that it's just far easier than taking the trouble to sort of create your own site for making petitions. So on CREDO's platform, it's very similar on the others. Just a few things to fill in. You want a title. You want to make this really clear what you want. So sort of framing your demand here. Let's say tell the local school district teach kids about climate change. And instead of local, because that's not a very good example, let's say tell the Oakland Unified School District, because that's where I live. Here, probably Oakland School Board, something along those lines. Also helps to spell things correctly. So whom you're petitioning, that's just the target. And, like I said, you want to make sure that the target is somebody that actually has the authority, either legally or, by way of running a corporation, to do what it is you're asking them to do. Um, so sometimes in the what do you want them to do, this is what we call the petition text. We want it to be generally framed as a direct demand, but sometimes we've found that it helps to have one sort of declarative statement that people agree with. So there's just a very simple example, sort of off the top of my head. So you've got this declarative statement that people will agree with, and then really the important thing is that it's pretty short, no more than a couple sentences, and that it's framed as a demand. So if you think about it, after the campaign has run its course, or when you're delivering the petition signatures to the Oakland School Board in this case, this is what you're telling them. Please teach all children in the district about the cause of climate change and what we can do to fight it. It's good to make it short because we've found if you have anything more than a few sentences, I think activists see that and they're afraid. Oh, there's too much here. There might be one piece I don't agree with. I don't want to take the time to verify all of this. We found it's best to just keep it simple. And even with relatively complex policy issues, you should be able to boil down sort of the crux of what you want to no more than a few sentences. If you feel like the issue is more complicated and you just can't do that, I would still recommend keeping the petition text short. And then when you deliver the petition, you can include a separate cover letter that makes your case in far greater detail. And that way you can actually get a broad base of support for your simplified version of the ask.
And that's also important when you do deliver the petition, so that that the ask is really clear to the policymaker. If there are 15 asks, then they can say that they satisfied what you were asking for by taking the easiest of those 15 items.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're really clear, this is what we want, it's a lot harder to evade that demand.
Yeah, and that sort of brings up another best practice we've found is, if at all possible, sort of try to keep it to one ask. It's more likely that people will sign on, and it's more likely that the decision maker will actually do what you're asking them to do. And then finally, toward the bottom, we've got this section called "Why is this important?" And this is sort of where we like to have context that explains the issue. So maybe there's some important background here. Maybe maybe there's a drought in Oakland, which happens to be the case. So that might be relevant to teaching kids about climate change. Maybe there are examples of other schools in California or elsewhere in the country that either are or are not teaching kids about climate change. Maybe Valero or Chevron, or one of our big fossil fuel companies here in California, has put in a proposal to stop schools from teaching about climate change. That's not true. I'm just using that as an example. At least I hope it's not true. And so we like to have in this section, for our purposes, 4 to 6 paragraphs. I know that may seem like a lot, but we've been sending CREDO activists really long, sort of substantive emails that go into detail on policies and sort of the problems we face for years, and so they've sort of gotten used to getting a fairly detailed argument. And then on CREDO's end, Josh mentioned that with some of the petitions, we will email those out to local activists to help get signatures on the petition. And so we're looking for petitions there that are well written, that are about a progressive political issue, that we think are strategic and that make sense, and if possible, ones that are getting some momentum on their own, where the petition creator is doing some of their own organizing around the issue and getting people to sign the petition. But it's for us to do that, we need to have 4 to 6 paragraphs here, because this section, this "Why is this important" section, is what we use to actually build the email. to CREDO activists. So we actually put that content into an email to sort of explain the issue to our activists when we're asking them to sign the petition. And these are sort of our major categories. Then you sort of, you can choose which categories. In this case, let's say environment and education, I think are the two. And then you just fill in a location, and it should pop up, and click Save. Oh, my Wi-Fi may have died in here. I apologize. Well, unfortunately, my Wi-Fi has died. But that'll show you that's sort of how you create the petition. On the next page, which I can't pull up right now, unfortunately, you just add an image is sort of the last step for creating a petition on CREDO, and then that's the image that sort of goes with the campaign, lives on the petition page there. So then after you create a petition, you're not done just by creating it. That's when sort of some of the work actually starts, right? Because then you need people to find out about your petition. You need to find people that care about it and get them to sign it. So there are a lot of things you can do. You've got your own personal network of your colleagues, your friends, your family, your coworkers, anybody you know who might care about this issue. So on the example of the teaching kids about climate change, you may know parents who care about this issue. You may know teachers, people that are involved at the school board level, or at the parents that are just especially active in the school. You may know science teachers. You may know other educators, scientists, environmentalists, anybody in your community who might care. So the easiest way to let people know is just to email them. Personal emails work best. Hey John, I wanted to share this petition I just created. It's really important to me because of X, Y, and Z. Can you sign it and let people know about it so they can sign it too? If that's not feasible, you can also sort of do a mass email. But definitely, if you do that, be sure to BCC people with the blind carbon copy, so you're not sharing everybody's email address. But I would really recommend, if you can, doing personal emails to people who care about the issue. Of course, there are social media sites like Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, all sorts of those now that are a great way to sort of share the petition link and get people to sign. The great thing about those is the reach will go beyond your personal network. So of course, if you share something on Facebook and then one of your friends shares it, it goes to their friends, and so more and more people can sign on. There also may be community listservs. There may be a listserv for parents at this school or that school. There may be a listserv for the school district or for your neighborhood. It may also be discussion forums for the same types of communities. These are great places, especially for locally based petitions with a target, in your city or in your community or in your school district. These are great ways to get the word out. Once people have started signing your petitions, there are a few things. There are lots of things you can do to follow up with them and to keep them engaged in the campaign and to get them to do increasingly meaningful things. So here's one example, and this is sort of in the back end of CREDO Mobilize, where we see the emails. So this is an email that went out a few weeks ago. I don't know if folks are following the situation with the water shutoffs in Detroit. The city and the emergency manager had been shutting off water to people who hadn't paid their bills. Sort of a humanitarian crisis with people not having access to the water. We worked with the folks at Progressive Democrats of America and a bunch of the local Detroit and Michigan-based groups that are working on this to do a petition telling the city to turn the taps back on, right? Tell Detroit, turn the taps back on, water is a human right. Thousands of people in the Detroit area signed the petition, and they held a rally that I was actually lucky enough to be at in Detroit a few weeks ago. And so this is an email that the petition creator sent through the CREDO Mobilize platform to the signers of her petition, inviting them to join this rally at Hart Plaza in downtown Detroit a couple weeks ago. The rally was huge. It was amazing. There were thousands of people there. It wasn't just from this email. Lots of local groups did all the the most of the legwork to set up the rally and get lots of local people to turn out. But we were glad we could invite the activists who had signed this petition to sort of take the next step, actually show up in the streets, carry a sign, march, and join the rally, calling for the water shutoffs to end. Another example is asking folks to make a phone call. So this is the House of Representatives was considering a bill this week, yesterday actually, to weaken the Endangered Species Act. We had a big petition with 129,000 signatures against that, telling Congress not to pass this bill that would weaken the ESA. Started by folks over at the Endangered Species Coalition, the executive director there. Once the petition was done, they wanted people to call Congress, right? So we worked with them to set up this call page, and this is something we're glad to do with you if you start a petition. And so anybody that lands on this call page could enter their name, email address, and zip code, and it would send them to a page with their member of Congress. See if I can pull one up right here. So as you can see, more than 1,900 people made calls to Congress from this the other day. Put in my address in Oakland, and I get my member of Congress, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who I'm guessing is with us on this one. And it gives you the opportunity to report the call, a suggested script, the phone number, some background information, everything you need there. Another sort of simple thing you can do, and this is a way to get more signatures once you've already got some, you can just ask folks to share the petition. So, hey, thanks for signing. In this example, 120,000 people have already joined. Can you share the petition right now? Here's the link. We helped this person set up custom links for sharing on Facebook and Twitter. So if you click the Facebook link, it automatically is ready to share, and they just have to click the share button to share it, just making it as easy as possible for people to help spread the word about the campaign. So one more example of a follow-up action is a petition delivery event. And so delivering your petition can be very simple. You can simply email it in. You can download the signatures and email them in, or send them via snail mail. Or you can put together a delivery event. You can set up a meeting with the decision maker, whether it's an elected official or a corporate leader, somebody like that. You can work to set up a meeting with them or their staff, and bring the petition signatures to them in person. You can also just show up. If it's your local school board meeting or your local city council meeting, just show up and bring the petition signatures there. Or you can do like these folks did, who are working on solar power in Utah, and you can put together a rally. And so they were having a rally outside a public hearing, and they used this as a petition delivery event. They sort of printed out a bunch of petition signatures as props, and then invited the 5,600 or so folks in Utah who had signed the petition to actually come to the rally in Salt Lake City just yesterday. And
somehow or other, it's important, no matter what, to somehow actually deliver the petition. I think sometimes people forget that part. But like, you promised all these people that you were going to deliver their voices to this decision maker. So it's really important to do that. And if you're going to do it, why not make a scene? Have someone there to take pictures, and then you can send an email afterwards saying, look, here's me delivering your petitions, so that people feel like they get that validation that they didn't just give you their name and disappear. You actually did the thing that you promised. And that keeps them engaged, and that keeps them engaged with the campaign, which doesn't end with the delivery of the petition either. So it sets you up for whatever the next step is in the campaign. But it's really important to think through how you're going to do that delivery and how you're going to tell people that their voice was heard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. Different organizations, I think, place different emphasis on the importance of delivering the petition. But for the reasons Josh said, and because frankly, it's the only way you're gonna get what you want. You have to actually make the demand to the decision maker. We think it's critically important. And so we're constantly, when folks create petitions on our site, we're always asking them, hey, do you have a plan to deliver this? Can we help you set up a delivery event? And if folks are unresponsive or unwilling to take care of it, CREDO actually does the delivery for them. But because of the sheer volume, that's sort of a simple email delivery where doing it in person with a meeting or a rally or something more confrontational is far more effective.
Or even something I mean, on some level confrontational, but at the Texas State Board of Education hearings on textbooks last year, there was a petition that I think was partly through Credo and maybe through some other platforms, asking them not to water down the science in the textbooks, and sympathetic board members came out to receive that petition at a press event. So it can be if it's a petition to a body and there are people who are on your side, they're probably happy to help draw the attention.
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't have to be confrontational. If you've got some of the decision makers or all of them are sympathetic, you can arrange with them for a good photo op. The Texas Board of Education example is a good one. We've also done that with members of Congress, where we had a petition to Congress, and then we had a member of the Progressive Caucus come out and take photos and accept our petition signatures and thank the activists. So that's also a great tactic. I guess situationally from campaign to campaign, if you're running a petition and working on a broader campaign around it, I think you'll know whether or not the confrontational approach makes sense. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Just one or two more things I want to bring up. It can also be helpful to let local reporters and bloggers know about your petition. And so there are a couple times when this might make sense when we think they're likely to pay attention. If you create a petition and get a bunch of people to sign on, so this is something at the city level, and you've got hundreds or thousands of signatures, the local paper will probably take note about that. If you just send the appropriate reporters a quick email to let them know. If you create petitions on CREDO Mobilize, where we're glad to provide templates for this. We've got press templates and tips on how to do this for petition creators. It's sort of just a petition. There are lots of issues out there that are contentious that city council might be fighting about, or other legislative bodies may be trying to make decisions on. But having a petition with a bunch of people signed onto it gives reporters a good sort of hook, gives them an excuse to write about the issue. So they don't just have to say, City Council Member A said this and City Council Member B said that. They can say City Council is debating this and 1,500 local residents have weighed in and said, this is our demand. Just a couple examples. We have thousands of petitions and we get hundreds of press hits. But here's an example. A campaign we had on for-profit colleges. It was picked up recently by USA Today. So that was nice. So even some of the sort of biggest outlets in the country, biggest newspapers in the world, do care about petitions. Just another example, the Washington Post, where they picked up one of our petitions, asking for Alan Grayson to be on the Benghazi committee. One last sort of quick thing, you can also write a letter to the editor about your petition. And here's one of our activists who did that recently. Sort of funny, they actually had a petition targeting the Boulder Daily Camera editors, telling the paper to stop publishing George Will's columns because they're offensive and often flat out inaccurate. And the letter was published in the Boulder Daily Camera, which was actually the target. So that worked out quite well. So we've seen in this instance and others that the papers are willing to publish letters to the editor about petition campaigns.
And we did one of these webinars on press outreach a few months back. So for those of you who haven't already seen it, there's a lot of other tips on how to do effective press outreach for events like this. If you're doing a petition delivery, or if you're just trying to get attention to the petition, suggestions there. And certainly, if you've got a petition on topics like evolution education or climate change education, uh, let NCSE know, and we'll do what we can to help promote it and draw attention as well.
Awesome. Well, that's sort of what I've got for the presentation part.
All right, and so I created another poll that I'll pull up here. A little bit of a review. See how everyone does. Which of these, in terms of sort of a title and talking about having a strong lead for a petition and thinking about theory of change, which of these works for you, and which of them perhaps doesn't? Just think about that for a second, and think about other questions that you have. I'm happy to go basically as long as people have questions. I think Josh is also. So think about questions. I hope this is useful. And while you're voting on that, I want to just emphasize something that Josh was saying, that a petition. One of the things that I always wondered about before I got involved in activism was, do these petitions really do anything? Is it even worth signing? Does anyone pay attention? And it varies. Some policymakers might blow it off, others don't. But the point of launching a petition, and to some extent the point of signing the petition, is not necessarily just to have the petition itself. A petition is a starting point. It's part of a campaign. And as an advocate or an activist, you launch a petition not just because you want to deliver a petition, but also because it's a way for you to get a list of contacts that you can come back to for other campaign actions, that you can come back to them and say, make that call to the policymaker, the individual, or send an email yourself directly to the policymaker. Those sorts of direct contacts can often be a lot more effective than a stack of signatures that the policymaker doesn't know. Do these people really care, or are they just sort of going along with it? Um, so think about the petition as part of a broader strategy, not as a strategy in and of itself. And so, in terms of, everyone did very well on this little poll. Um, you know, saying everyone, I hope we all can agree that cats are pretty awesome, but I don't need to sign a petition for that, right? There's no action to take there. President Obama can't do anything about the fact that cats are awesome, or even if you think that they weren't awesome, he couldn't do anything about it. Um, but so having a clear target and a clear ask and a clear relationship between the two. Um, so in the case of the example with voting rights in Ohio, it was a petition to the U.S. Attorney General. So even if I don't live in Ohio, I can sign that petition because the U.S. Attorney General works for me. If that was targeted at the Ohio legislature, I live in California, I'm not going to sign that petition because I don't feel like I have influence over that policymaker. And a petition to the United Nations saying protect voting rights in Ohio is also not going to go anywhere because the United Nations doesn't really have anything to do with voting in Ohio. So making sure there's a clear match between the different parts of the petition is really important. People are not going to sign a petition that they don't think is really going to work. And that's where those 4 to 6 paragraphs of explanation of the issue can help. And that's where having a really clear description of what you're asking for and how the person you're petitioning can deliver it, that short, a couple of sentences ask in the petition are really valuable also. So good job. There were a couple of questions that came in. I'm going to turn off the petition and turn on my camera. A couple of questions. Lori Lebo in Pennsylvania asks, we were talking about using LinkedIn as one of the ways to help promote it. Have you found what works best? I would guess that Facebook is where most people get things, and then Twitter. But my guess is that you should share it through every platform that's accessible and see what sticks. But in terms of concentrating effort, is there what's the best place to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that it does make sense to push it out in any medium you have, any network you have. We found that the most people come in through email, then Facebook, then Twitter, then LinkedIn and other sites. It varies from campaign to campaign, but on balance, email is by far the winner, and Facebook is by far number two. Um, Twitter is great for raising awareness, but people don't tend to click links and sign petitions on Twitter at the same rate they do on Facebook. And we've just started to experiment with LinkedIn, but it hasn't been a huge source so far. We're optimistic that LinkedIn will become a sort of bigger source of where people get news about petitions.
And it probably also depends a lot on the issue. If there's something that if you're part of a professional group on LinkedIn that is directly connected to the issue, if you're part of a group of environmental educators and you're talking about climate change education, I could see LinkedIn being effective at spreading the word in ways that, for an issue that wasn't related to your professional network, it might be harder.
It's a
But
great point.
people don't necessarily go to LinkedIn for that sort of content in any event.
Mm-hmm. And I've talked to the folks that there's a company called Share Progress that sort of helps companies and nonprofits develop their strategies for getting people to share content online. And I've talked to them about, do we want to ask people to share on Reddit.com or on LinkedIn and StumbleUpon, and for now they're just focusing on Facebook, email, Twitter because those are the big three. But they're sort of monitoring, what's going to be next, and they're also optimistic about the future with LinkedIn.
And at this point, things like Pinterest, no?
We have not had any luck with it. I think it's certainly possible it could work. If somebody has a huge following on Pinterest or maybe Instagram, that could be a big source of signatures. But we haven't invested much time in it and haven't had much luck.
Yeah.
We have had a few things sort of go viral on Tumblr, but it's not something we've been able to recreate on purpose intentionally. It just sort of happens from time to time.
Yeah. And obviously with all of this, also you're writing to big-time bloggers who cover those issues, on science issues, writing to Phil Plait or PZ Myers. Uh, they can amplify the voice of a local effort and often are quite willing to do that. And same thing for if you know somebody who's a Twitter celebrity or a Facebook celebrity and has a huge following, just writing them a note. Often people are often quite willing to do that, and it's a good skill to have to be able to ask someone who you don't know that well to do you a favor. If you can do that, it's basically the same thing that you're doing with the petition, right? You're asking someone who you don't have a close relationship with that policymaker, because if you did, you just take a meeting with them, right? So getting that practice is really valuable. Another question someone asked, Lawrence Lazar asks, I've read that some petitions are used only to collect email addresses and are never used to petition. He asked, is there evidence for this? And I guess also, how can the consumer be sure that they're not just that they're signing up for something that's for email harvesting or for spam purposes or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some organizations and I think mostly political campaigns that do things that look like online organizing that are actually just trying to get people on their email list so they can raise money. I think it's hard to tell when that's the case, but one of the best ways is sort of if you're on email lists, pay attention to what sort of follow-up you receive. Right? When after they ask you to sign the petition, do they then send you photos of the petition delivery? Do they then ask you to make phone calls or do something else? Do they let you know what happened? Did the vote go your way? Did we get the policy we wanted? Or do they just ask you for money after the fact? It's unfortunate that some organizations do that, but we always we're in this to create social change, and so yes, when people sign a petition, they're signing up for our email list, and that's so we can contact them and create more social change. But we always try to maximize the impact and of course always deliver the petition signatures.
And I think the important thing there in terms of people thinking about creating a petition or launching a campaign is that that's how people are going to be judging your work also. That the job doesn't end when someone signs the petition. That's really where your follow up with them becomes really crucial. To be sending them those updates that, oh, did you hear there's a hearing next week? And be sure to call your member of Congress to tell them about this hearing, or your member of the state legislature, uh, if there's an event, or if, to remain getting that contact information is the first step. It's not the last step. And I think a lot of first-time petition launchers don't don't really think that far ahead, and it's worth mapping out a little bit about what are those benchmarks going to be. What are the things on the calendar that I'm going to be able to send out an email saying, "Hey, sign up for this. It's really important." Uh,
And
sorry.
I would just add that sometimes we'll even work backwards. So we'll know, hey, there's going to be a big vote on something in a month, and we're going to want to do a big rally. We're going to want to generate thousands of phone calls to Congress. We have a month. Let's start with a petition so we can educate folks about this, find out who cares about it, and sort of prime them to do those next things. So it is, as Josh said, I think very useful to sort of think about before you even start the petition, already start thinking about what are we going to ask them to do next? How do we go from this petition to changing this policy or passing this law or what the actual endpoint is?
And in terms of timeline, I mean, a month sounds like it's not a long time to be able to generate that sort of response. What's a realistic timeline for someone who hasn't done this before, doesn't have a huge email list already, to generate a reasonably sized petition? And I guess as part of that, what is a reasonably sized petition? Do you have a rule of thumb of how big is a petition if you're going to make a delivery? How big should it be before you plan that?
Sure. I think there's a huge variation depending on sort of the geographical area you're working in. So if you want to get the attention of President Obama, it's going to take a really big petition. If it's your local school board or even state legislature or a governor, hundreds of signatures can get their attention. There are hyperlocal issues, a small community where 25 people on a petition will get a decision maker's attention. In some smaller, like lower population states, we've heard back from governors with when we sent them less than 1,000 petition signatures. So there's a huge variation there. Some things take off very quickly. I shared that example of the campaign on Arizona discrimination for earlier this spring. That got a state level campaign that got tens of thousands of signatures in just a few days. That was one of the fastest we've seen a state level petition grow. If you're organizing on your own and you don't have sort of a group with a big email list in your corner, it can be hard, and it may take weeks or months to sort of build up your petition to a sizable number. But by sort of leveraging the early people who sign in initially and getting them to help spread the word about it, you can make that go faster. And sort of as you mentioned before, Josh, and this is the case at CREDO, and I know it's also the case at MoveOn and Change.org and probably other groups as well. If you have a really good petition on a topic that group cares about, and you're doing your best and working on it, they'll probably help you. And so these groups with big email lists can spike the numbers up to huge numbers in a matter of hours or days. And so for us, if we see something that's timely that we really think is important, we'll get an email out to our activists, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of them within a few days.
And another thing that I'll put out there as a way to promote something is on Facebook and through Google, you can relatively cheaply buy targeted advertising. And that's probably a topic for a whole nother webinar down the road. And next month I do want to I'm working on putting one together about social media specifically and how to use social media to your best advantage as an advocate and as an activist. But using that targeted advertising, you can say, show this ad to people who live in this zip code who have said that they are interested in education and climate change. So who you know are interested in your issue, you can see exactly how many people are likely to would be eligible to see that ad. Um, you can have it be very, very targeted so that you're not wasting any money. And for $20, you can get it in front of people who are not part of your social network, but who should be interested in it. And that can be a way to expand the reach a little bit for relatively little cost and with relatively little waste in terms of, and you only pay if someone actually clicks the ad. So if the ad is bad or if you're reaching people who shouldn't be part of the target, you're not going to be wasting a ton of money anyway. But we've done that a little bit to help spread the word. If we were trying to looking at a really targeted geographical area where we didn't have a deep network to begin with, that can be a way to expand your reach a little bit. And I think you pay something like a quarter or 50 cents per click, so it's pretty cheap and can be a good way to start the ball rolling in an if you're doing a statewide petition and you don't have a good network in one corner of the state, you can target it that way. Google AdWords, you can do the same thing, geographical targeting, and target people who are searching for information on your issue. You know that they're interested in your issue, you know they're in your target area, and similar costs. So that can be another effective way for, without spending too much money, to reach people who you might not otherwise have in your network. I just wanted to add that this will all be recorded and should be up on NCSC's YouTube channel shortly, hopefully this by the end of the week, if not sooner, and also on NCSC's website where you can find all of our past webinars, including the one on media outreach, including one on lobbying, which is obviously a related issue here. So if you haven't checked those out, I hope that you will. And I hope that you will spread the word about how awesome these webinars are and encourage people to sign up for next month's, which is not scheduled yet, but which, as I said, I want to talk about how to use social media to spread the word about the issues that we care about. So I'm still putting together the panel for that, but I'm pretty excited about the possibilities, and I hope you are too, and I hope you'll join us. And until then, take care and do feel free to shoot me an email if you have a petition that you want to spread the word about or other topics that you want to see covered. You can contact me at rosenow@ncsc.com, and everyone who registered to attend this will get a survey asking what they thought. I hope you'll fill those out. I do look at them. And with that, thank you and have a great day.